I'm pleased to introduce Douglas Penick, whose work has appeared in Tricycle, New England Review, Parabola, and other literary journals. He has written libretti for operas, and his books include Journey of the North Star, The Age of Waiting, and The Oceans of Cruelty. In this session, Douglas will discuss his latest book, Winter Light, on late life's radiance.
I've written on all kinds of things, even most improbably, done librettos for two operas, one in Munich and one in Santa Fe. And so writing about old age wasn't something I thought I was going to do. It wasn't something I thought I I just didn't imagine that I would do such a thing. In the and so what happened was when I realized I was actually old, it was both a shock and, as I'm sure you know, um, it slightly comes about from people standing up when you get on the subway and stuff like that, which had never happened before, or holding doors, or calling you sir or ma'am, or, or assuming you cannot pick up the food you just bought. Stuff like that, which is both kindly, but at the same time, oops, you didn't realize that's what had happened, or I didn't. And then a more inward sense of um, that maybe there isn't so much time left, that kind of feeling. So um, that's how I got started. And I also realized that people didn't talk about this. They simply didn't. So I started this book, which ended up being called Winter Light on Late Life's Radiance from Punctum Books. And so early on, I say that I have written this. All at once, and much to my surprise, I'm old. I did not expect it, and it is not what I expected. The world in which I worked, struggled, dreamed, and loved now regards me quite differently than it did even 10 years ago. Abruptly, I'm one in a large minority that is often ignored, frequently disdained, and regularly segregated. From the point of view of children, adolescents, and adults in general, I am no longer completely part of the world on the go. I am no longer part of the social groups in which I had a place. People dear to me decline precipitously and die. Familiar coffee shops, stores, parks, landmarks are gone. We now know we are subjects completely of time and change. Customs, fashions, beliefs, truths, even the idea of the future, all these have changed. It becomes clear in old age that we will not be establishing a stable way of existing in space or in time. Navigating this altered world requires circumspection. By aging, it seems, we have become exiles.
Wow. Now, you draw inspiration from Beethoven's late sonatas that you write about in this book. What role has music played in your experience of aging and writing?
I think um, I've listened to music since I was very little, and my mother took me to concerts that I remember when I was about 6 or 5. And I think the thing with music here is that music can be extremely meaningful, feels extremely meaningful. But what that meaning is is almost impossible to articulate in any way other than music. So it points to a sense of meaning that isn't just one-to-one, haste makes waste. If you do this, you'll be sorry, stuff like that. It's a more mysterious, really, way of finding things out. But it's like when I don't know, you're walking down the street and there's something, it could be something a little spooky and you feel uncomfortable, or it could be something alluring, but it's not based on some one-to-one mapping with your experience. So
Sounds
that's
like it
it.
evokes a feeling that cannot be expressed in words a lot of
Yes.
times. Yeah.
And music also is reliant on structures that we can't see. And unlike in, say, painting, where you actually can see how it's structured, people who are well trained in music can hear it and music requires memory because that's how the patterns evolve. So it's a whole different dimension of pattern, and I think it's one that's always stuck with me or captivated me. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, on the concept of aging, you write that to become old is to become other, which you just touched upon a little bit. Can you talk a little bit more about what you mean by that and how it has shaped your perspective?
Well, you become other than what you thought you were because people are treating you differently. You also become other than what you thought you were because your body doesn't function in the same way it used to. You don't look exactly the way you used to. You are socially in a different situation. Uh, your mind doesn't even function in a way that's always terribly familiar. Uh, so it's new, and it's not the self you've identified with. I think that's a big problem for people because they haven't identified with themselves as being old or as their new old self. Um, and so the newness of it, the freshness and scariness, but also revealing aspect, you know, is
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
So it's mixed. So
And
mhm.
you describe aging not just as decline, but as a gateway to new perceptions. What are some things that you've come to see more clearly with age?
I think it's different for everybody, of course. So I couldn't say you know when you get old, this will be that it'll be like this. But because I think it depends sort of on the kinds of interests you've had before, or maybe the way you are accessible to new things. Um, I find myself that even that sense perceptions are much more intense. Clouds are more intense. I look out the window at the foothills and there's trees and stuff. And a friend of mine's father, who was 92, was sitting in the backyard and there were a lot of trees and lawn and whatnot. And he said, I never realized there were so many kinds of green. And so that sort of thing happens. Um, at the same time, because when we're younger, we're thinking about our life from the point of view of what we want to accomplish and what we're going to do next and how's it going or what to do if it's not going well and all of that. So our experience of life is formatted by the by our intentions. When we get old, our intentions are a little bit more up for grabs. I mean, we know that we could suddenly have something that would change us quite a lot and be very, very difficult. And of course, we could die and will. And in that gap, I think, where intentions don't matter anymore, that allows you to new things to come at you, and you can receive it differently.
But we look at things a little differently than before. What do you think? Why do you think Western culture is so uneasy with aging and death compared to traditions that you write about, like those in China or India?
Um, well, China and India are both ancient and fundamentally agricultural societies that have had to transform themselves in the last 200 years, 250 years. Um, Western, we are capitalist in semi-industrial societies. And that means that two things really, that these are extremely competitive, where we grow up believing in competition. Market competition will, reveal the truth of what's what and what should be. And it's the most advantageous way of proceeding. And so we are sort of set at each other from the get-go. And the other side is the basic mind of industrialism, in that you have what you want. You have a conception of what you would like, and then you find the raw materials, and then there is there are there's the aspect of the raw materials, and this includes people in the end. There's the aspect of raw materials that lead towards building what you want, and the rest is junk. We toss the rest away. So we're used to looking at things like, I'll keep this part, but I'll throw that out. And that there's a constant dividing. So I think that makes it more difficult. Both of those things, both the competitiveness as a fundamental mode of interaction and the fundamental mind of dividing in things into yes and no, good and bad, useful, not useful, um, and judging the whole world by your desires, basically. Utility is basically another word for desires, for it'll work for you. Um, so it's a different, it doesn't allow for as much appreciation for people when they get old, because they're useless. Simone de Beauvoir's book is ruthless on this subject. And she's she's cold-eyed on this matter, that when you're old, you're out. And and yeah, so that's an extraordinary book. But yeah, so that's a difficult. We grew up like that. So, and the people around us grew up like that. So it makes that kind of hardship.
As
Also, I
opposed
should
to the
say
other
that
side of the
I had a terrible time getting this book published, and people really don't like old age. They do not like it. And they don't like thinking that they will become old. It's much easier to think about being dead, because you can imagine all kinds of stuff. But being old, you can't imagine. You've seen it. And people really don't like it and don't want to think about it at all. And so that puts those of us who are old and moving forward in a position of, in a way, finding new territory. It's great.
Yeah, you also explore how aging alters our relationship with the body and the senses. How has your own sensory world changed?
It's a kind of interesting. Well, I mean, of course, you get deaf and you don't see as well. And uh, personally, I find my sense of smell somewhat more acute. My sense of taste is maybe a little shifted away from sweet, sugary sweetness, which I used to like a lot. But so it changes. I mean, it also happened with, for instance, the great Russian pianist Sviatoslav Richter, that his pitch sensibility, he had perfect pitch, but then it went down a whole pitch.
Mhm.
So he couldn't play concerti anymore. He couldn't play with orchestras or with, because he heard one pitch down. And he said that it also happened to Prokofiev and to his teacher, Heinrich Neuhaus. But so actually, what that means is you're actually not exactly hearing, seeing, and smelling the same world as everybody else when you get old, or certainly as younger people. And maybe we never were. Maybe it was a good,
That's a good point.
you know. So
Can you
that's
share one of your readings on this topic from, I think it's around page 24?
July 24. Let's see what we've got. Old age is also a time when our experience becomes more intense. A feeling of uncertainty underlies everything. Each of us becomes isolated in this. We become more alone and more wary. This is not just a matter of looking more carefully at the sidewalk, at oncoming traffic, at things relating to safety. It carries over into how we are aware of friends and family and their lives. It somehow makes the sky more brilliant and hot weather more hot. Everything is sharper emotionally. And then there's this. My wife is sleeping, and suddenly I am overwhelmed and about to burst into tears. I don't know why. It's not a time, however, when we can hide much, particularly from ourselves. As we are growing old, our body and our world inexorably slip from our grasp and out of our control. Old age is marked by the most extreme losses, unknowns, the deepest and most intractable fears. Life is moving towards its end, even as the intensity of living continues. Being alive, living in this body, in this world, walking home on a just too chilly early spring evening, this moment, among so many others, has intense allure. We feel such a deep desire for it all. Even if our desires do not take on quite the same form as earlier, sexual desire, social and economic ambitions do not vanish. They are just strangely altered, more tender, sad even. And they're less at the forefront of a journey which is more and more taking us where it will. And we don't know where that is. I can go on.
Now, on art, oh, did you want to read one more?
No,
The
okay, I
next one?
can finish it.
Okay.
A very different space is opening before us. We are moving closer to dying. Subtly, obliquely, something alien is stirring in our body. We feel its slight advance, even when say we are brushing our teeth. A sudden cramp in the hand. The brush falls into the sink. For a moment, there's a break in the morning continuum. An instant when we lose possession of what we expect is a sharp hint at something more absolute. It's a minute glimpse of a larger loss. This does not displace our desires and longings. It places them in a different and more fragile context. So many momentary impulses, fears, yearnings have shaped us and are shaping us now. Now they flicker like constellations seen in the wide, lightless depth of night. And we have a certain curiosity, a kind of unforced, unshaped appetite, binding us to these flickering patterns. Darkness and starlight intensify each other. Yeah.
Now, you also talk about art and the late style. Much of Winter Light focuses on artists like Titian, Jean Rhys, and Cézanne. What drew you, and I'm pronouncing them wrong, I know, but what
Just
drew you to
Titian.
them? What drew you to them, to these figures?
Well, I was looking for them, and I was as I talk about it right at the beginning, the first time I saw anything like this was in Beethoven when I was very young, and I was about 17, and I happened to hear a concert where somebody played a late Beethoven sonata, and I had heard other Beethoven things, and I was completely shocked. This sounded, I don't know, it came from a completely different world. It came from the edge of something. And that's Beethoven's late period is a famous one, and he's it's a famous transition, and the work with string quartets and so forth, piano sonatas are well known as examples of this. And he wasn't that old when he died. I mean, he died at 57, so this began at 52. And it's very, it's an actual change. So it happened with, I mean, there were many artists who continued to be prolific or well into their old age, but didn't change their styles enormously, or out of it didn't suddenly move into a different kind of register. So I got interested in people where this had happened, and Michelangelo, um, Titian, of course, and it became Janáček, the great Czech composer and opera composer. Almost everything he wrote was after he was 65. He fell in love, and unrequited love. And so I was interested in, well, what did people do with this new space they found themselves in? And there it was more clear. On the other hand, there wasn't any explanation. There wasn't anything. I wasn't looking for some sort of common scientific thing that they all did, and they all ate vitamin B, or something like that. They all did different things. They were completely different, and they found different things. And I thought that to talk about that, or simply to present it, which is really all I do, um, to present it was in some ways encouraging for people, even if you're not an artist or anything dramatic, to feel that at this time of life, when there is so much loss, and so much loss on the level of our bodies, there's level on the of our perceptions, the levels on our capacities, but there's also a loss of friends, friendships, social order, and we have also ended up in a world that we didn't expect to be in. So that's a lot of things to get lost, to lose. That within that, people were finding all kinds of stuff. So it was to say that maybe there was this vaster space, and that was all. It's just speculative in that sense, and I'm not certainly not saying what people should do. It's not a self-help book, and I'm certainly not saying how they should do it, because how people explore something so crucial in their own life, which is, say, coming to the end, and many things like that. At that time, uh, it's I hope only that it encourages people to explore. Yeah.
Yeah, there are a lot of examples in here of artists' late periods, and so they reflect something universal about aging, whether or not we're artists ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that Titian's, I hope I said it right this time. Titian's late works were messier, they were more personal, they were even raw. Is there something liberating about letting go of polish and perfection in old age?
I'll bet he didn't think like that. Um, what was said about his work at the time was, I mean, Titian's work had these perfect surfaces and was perfectly realistic and perfectly observed and very sensuous and very shrewd. He was immensely successful. He painted every king, every pope, every noble wanted a painting by him. And he lived a very, very long time. And then in late life, he began making these sort of messier surfaces. So the earlier paintings you can see close up or you can see far away. The later paintings you can't see close up, and as you back up, can you see how the light was fragmented from close up and comes together from far away. It's quite amazing, and it's also amazing that his clients didn't have a problem with this because it wasn't like looking like a Titian brand Titian. It was a brand new Titian, and but his power as an artist was um, you know, undiminished in all of this. Hang on here. There was something, I think it's here. Yeah, a similar thing happened with Chinese people. Do you mind if I go on about this, or?
Oh, sure. Mhm.
Um, uh, in Chinese paintings, which is all ink painting, no? Or at least here. So it says, in the Confucian outlook that was dominated in later times, painted images were not considered to have a kind of the kind of spiritual power that had been the case in Taoism. Even so, elderly paintings were often acknowledged as having achieved a special freedom from conventional constraints. Fa Quan in the early 11th century said, my predecessor, Li Zheng's method consisted of a direct apprehension of things in nature. Here I am, learning from a man, which is not the equal of learning from the things themselves. But better than either of these methods is the way of learning from my own heart. Shen Hao said of his predecessor Nizan, 1301 to 1374, he could not avoid depending on his predecessors, yet in his old age he followed his own ideas and was like an old lion, walking alone without a single companion. Guo Ruoshu, in 1070, said of his elderly contemporary Shu Daoning, early in his career, he set great store by a meticulous precision, but as an old man, he cared only for simplicity and swiftness of drawing. Similarly, Mi Fu, in 1050 to 1107, wrote of his near contemporary Juran, when old, he became plain and lofty in spirit. And the great polymath Sushi said of his predecessor, the older he grew, the more wonderful his brushwork became. Although he was no longer clear and even, the spirit of it was most uncommon. So it's a known thing. And in some it had to do with coming closer to the heart of the matter, the heart of oneself, the heart of the reality that one was confronted with. And there's a lot of emphasis on the spirit of the natural environment, the feeling of it. So yeah, I think in old age, I mean, a lot of people, you hear this and they say, oh, it's great being old. I don't care what people think. This is quite ordinary. Um, there's some truth in that, but I think it doesn't just mean you can sit around, and drum your heels on the floor or something, or yell and scream, or eat all the candy you want. I mean, it's more. You're free of those conventions, but you could do something more interesting with it. explore it.
cool.
An
Yeah.
interesting thing.
And it sounds like later in life, their work evolved. So it was still their work,
Oh yeah,
but it was, the next evolution. So you can still, right? You can still
yeah.
continue evolving. And since the public knows who you are, you still have that cachet, the laurels that you've achieved
Well, I
continue.
think one of the absolutely weirdest and one of the, in a certain way, disturbing is Willem de Kooning. You know, who was a great painter. Was a great painter and abstract expressionist, and but more to the expressionist side than the abstract side, and had terrible. I mean, and his paintings sold. He he got as much money as any living artist ever had, and so that he made a lot of money. And then he got ferocious, total Alzheimer's. Apparently, he couldn't talk, anything. And his daughter and the assistants, they would lay out paint already mixed for him, and they would project a painting on a canvas, and he would do some much more abstract version of it. And if and then when they stopped putting projections on it, do circles. That when these paintings were exhibited, because of some people said, "Oh, this is a great late period." Other people found this kind of disturbing because it didn't. It was clearly sort of not the same painter. I mean, it was somebody who knew how to paint, and it was
Mm,
somebody who knew about the balances of colors and patterns and shapes. So it wasn't, some big horrible mess. They're quite beautiful in a kind of designery way, but they don't have any of the emotional intensity, or I don't think they do, of his the work that his reputation is based on. So it's very disturbing. I mean, he was also very fortunate in that since there was so much money involved, they could afford to do this for him, you know. And so yeah, I mean, I don't know.
yeah. So he needed help at that point,
Yeah,
but his essence still existed.
yeah, he was still a
He was
painter.
still, yeah. Yep.
You don't look at those things and think, ugh, it's not like finger painting or some kind of baby thing. It's sophisticated painting, but it's not the same painter.
Yeah.
Or it's not a painter concerned with the same issues. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of disturbing, and I don't think it's bad to be disturbed by these kinds of questions.
Yeah.
It's hard to
Now,
resolve that one.
on memory and time, in the
Mm,
chapter waiting,
yes.
you describe memory as less linear and more dreamlike. What happens to our experience of time as we grow older?
Well, I think there are lots of things, you know. Um, uh, I wasn't thinking I would do this, but let's, um, let's do this. In old age, we're surprised to find that in some deep and fundamental way, our minds aren't changed at all. Even from the time we were infants, we have always somehow been continuously aware. Aware in waking, aware in dreams, aware in childhood, aware in youth, desire, ambition, lust, anxiety, fear, and so forth. We are awaited in old age, in loss, and in our forgetting. It's always there, some sort of bright, clear, impersonal, omnipresent stillness. It's not a thread, but more it's the loom uh, on which all our momentary flickerings are weaving together. It's something or not something. It's not something. It's not a something, and it's not a not something. I'm sorry. It's just the fact that we're always looking, hearing, sensing, and reflecting. So now we find our old age body, our old age world strange, alien, because this awareness continues unchanged. Perhaps because we are less focused on goals, this continuing is vivid if unsought. As life is drawing us towards our end, we are waiting. In old age, a subliminal and wary pause comes to pervade our remembering, our anticipation, our desires. We do not know how to look at, much less prepare for, what is ahead. Waiting for death is waiting for what cannot be known, for the moment when even the knower will vanish. We can neither accelerate nor slow down. Underlying uncertainty, fear, and curiosity intensify the future, the present, and the past. So, yeah, our memory. I think a lot of things happen. We were talking the other day, and sometimes you find yourself. I mean, I was talking about. I was walking down some outdoor stairs, and there was a wall, a wooden wall, and there was a valley far off, and it was a hot day, but there was a cool breeze, and there was the smell of the concrete, that dry smell that rises from that when those things when that gets hot, and somehow I felt the beginning of something. I felt the way I felt many years ago when I was in a similar place, and there was something was about to begin. And there was no way I could unpack that and make that into an actual memory of something or so and so. But it was a feeling that came back with great intensity, and I can remember it verbally, but I can't summon it up right now. I mean, I can only summon up words. Um, so yeah, I think things come back to us in ways that are very touching, but what they mean, we don't know. It's not like, yeah. And then, of course, there's the issue of not being able to remember. And that's difficult.
Or you know that the memory is there and it takes a few hours for the file drawer to open.
Yeah, yeah.
And then it comes. Yeah.
Well, I've been through a couple of phases with that. And uh, for quite a while, I could do sort of analytically, I could sort of move around the thing I had forgotten as if it was a hole in a fabric. And in that way, it would come back together. Uh, then I had a episode of transient global amnesia, which I lost completely about 6 hours. And they said, oh, and it'll have no after effects. Well, it did, because that particular way of recalling memories no longer worked. Because where I forgot was now more sort of a hazy, just a haze. So I couldn't start anywhere. Uh, Sometimes I find it, so then the memory would come back, or the thing I was looking for, but I didn't have control of that anymore. And so there's that kind of forgetting. Then there's the kind of forgetting. I mean, I think there's lots more going on here than people have looked into. And or at least that's my experience. I mean, I also found that the kind of thing where you forget to turn off the sink, turn off the faucet, when you leave the kitchen,
Uh-huh.
when you forget to shut off the light, whatever the thing was, you forget. That's a very different kind of forgetting, because the forgetting of a name or a word or something you were supposed to do, those things have a kind of substantial quality. I mean, there's a word and there's an object that it's moving around in there. When you moved away from the sink, to me, what's happening there is I realized I was visualizing the next thing as if it had already happened. So, we slightly anticipate our activities by visualization constantly.
Mhm.
So I was visualizing I was about to go out the door. So I was already going out the door and I had forget the sink was irrelevant, or I was sure I had done all the things necessary to get me out of the door. And I found I could monkey with that and kind of make that less of a problem by being clear about that it was about moving through space rather than trying to put word and object together.
Yeah, and you describe aging as a state of suspension, neither fully here nor gone. How can we live meaningfully in that liminal space?
I think it's all like that, frankly. Um, I mean, there's always there's the parts of your life where there's where you are and where you want to be. So you're in the space between where you are and where you want to be, and you hope that you're advancing the cause to get to where you want to be. Uh, and it's only meaningful if you're going to get what you want, if you actually get there. Um, at this point in our lives, it's not controlled by us, or not as clearly. We can't do it that way. Um, our we will die, and we are also subject to sudden attacks of weird, disorienting, and fairly horrifying things that change our world completely. So we what's meaningful then is again to is in the quality of our experience itself. I mean, it's not meaningful in the grand scheme of things. Your name will not be put on the United Nations, but it's it can be incredibly sad, or I don't know. I think it's in a way for us to discover the meaning that's there. I think that's the provocation at this point. Is you can either say, well, it's all meaning. I've lived my life. I've worked so hard, and all I am is going to die like a dog. That's not untrue, but maybe there's more to it. Maybe there was more in what happened. Maybe there's more in what's happening. I mean, that's certainly not a promise, but you know, I think the meaning is not a given. The meaning is what we discover. And the meaning is what we discover that we can extend to others in a way that's helpful, maybe, or encouraging or something.
Yeah, and you can also take it with a grain of salt or have a sense of humor about it. There are
You
different
better.
ways of perceiving it, I would think. Now, on loss and mortality, you don't shy away from the hard truths in this book. Loss of function, identity, even dignity. How do we face that without despair?
Well, there's just a lot for each person. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's completely individual. There are people who are practitioners of various kinds of religion, and there are kinds of solace and interest that can be found there. Um, think it's the thing you work out in fear and trembling, what you do at that point. I don't think there's a recipe here. I think there are people, I could go on and on about the various things people do, but what I'll do or what you'll do, I don't know. I don't know. You wanted me to read something here, I'll bet you.
I think you have something related to this around page 116.
Yeah. Okay, great, thank you. When old, all the arrangements are less stable. The realities and capacities of now may at any time bend and buckle. Nevertheless, it becomes clear that while in earlier parts of life one might be forging some kind of personal identity, now in old age, individuality dissolves. One may look back, but cannot go there. No one can imagine getting old at all. We simply can't. Transient global amnesia, something that rarely affects the young, is an experience of complete disappearance. And this because old age is the dissolution of identity. And it just is. But life, living, shimmering in the unceasing moments of shift, of falling, of electricity and brain waves, we, even as we dissolve, still can see it, smell and taste and touch it, hear it. Thus, we cannot help now but be and sing the world so revealed in our passing. Splendor, love, tenderness, sunset, golden pink, magenta, black, screaming, fills the blank sky above a cold, withdrawing tide. And as one surrenders to each moment, even as one washes a fork, the idea of the observer begins to melt. The observer, the knower, the experiencer moves in and out, becomes for a moment, then another unnecessary. The focus is melting as phenomena ceaselessly, generously unfold. We are being melted into air and density and sound and bitterness and awareness all together, which has no future, past, or purpose. Held there by mountains, a night bright with fires that light them in the dark, and freeze captured by stars. The extravagance of our heart mind, untethered, its uncontrolled outpourings are overwhelming, delirious, frightening. Abandoned from without, turned inward, we wander in a jungle overwhelmed by smells of perfume and rot, and bird song and monkey screams and insects, reptiles, predatory cats, deadly diseases. It is easy to lose our way, to follow one trail then another, walk beside one stream, hoping to reach the sea. 1,500 years ago in central China, Li Bo sang, "If you're not drunk yet, how will you ever find your way home?"
You also had something at the end of 133.
Perhaps our inability to create lasting frameworks which could contain the torrential outpourings of our mind streams, sourceless images, causeless intuitions, unprompted fears, sudden objectless love, sudden clarity, revulsion, motiveless panic, and so forth, is exactly the point. Perhaps it is when we lose the energy necessary to maintain the social constructs called functionality or reason that we may find ourselves adrift in the fevers of this vast and hidden stream. If so, Perhaps we might regard those we now call demented as simply having followed, accidentally, even unwillingly, their awareness to another dimension, which is common to us all, but which we do not yet have the confidence to share.
On vision and radiance. So
Yeah.
in the domains of vision chapter, what is the radiance of late life that the book's subtitle on late life's radiance refer to?
It's the, I guess I could say, it's the violent awareness that is born in upon us. The world provides us with such, or you could even say assaults us with, but it definitely confronts us with so much intensity and so much vividness and good, bad, or indifferent. It's like that. It is that. And so that is the radiance of it. And yeah.
Yeah. And is there a kind of beauty that only becomes visible in the final stages of life?
Yes. Just as there's a kind of beauty that's only visible when you're an adolescent. You know, and in middle age. Uh, Old age is not a defective version of what's gone before. It is its own time with its own gifts and its own hardships. And just as every other time has had that in our lives. And it, yeah, it's the gift we receive at the end of life.
If you could speak to your younger self now, what would you say about aging?
That's assuming I would ask. The younger self would ask. About, um, I would say this. I mean, I'd say what I'm saying, but I don't know that I would have asked. It's very hard to imagine that you'll be old. I think it's really, really hard, almost impossible, because it's your body and yourself has suddenly been transformed, and not in a way that you said you intended. You don't think, oh, I bet you being deaf would be fun. You don't do that. Um, I mean, one of the problems of being deaf is like if you stick your fingers in your sense of space gets small. Oh, how about that? Um, so the different worlds that get presented to us, or that we won't end up in the political situation that we are in. I don't think I could have imagined that.
And we've lived through the before all this happened. So we have
Yeah.
this perspective. Um, so you described this book as a companion to others entering late life. What kind of companionship did you hope to offer?
I hope it's just really ordinary companionship, because I don't. The book is not self-help. It's not instructional. It's not to provide some new and amazing roadmap to friction-free passage. Uh, it just talks about what happens, or what has happened to me, and what has happened to other people, and certainly that's not exhaustive at all. So in that sense, that when you're taking a walk with somebody, you talk about what happened or what's happening, what's up. So I hope this book functions in that way rather than as a something that gives a direction or anything like that. I hope it's just companionable. Yeah.
Yeah. Before we go, And in case someone else has a question, has writing Winter Light changed the way you see your own aging and mortality?
It certainly made it more necessary to focus clearly, because I don't think you can write about things, or I hope you can't write about things unless you have certain amount of clarity to convey, that you actually could do that. And I think it was just that, I more than anything. And also the sense that maybe that I was old amongst a whole bunch of other older people, that became also clearer. Not that I didn't know that, but somehow it made it more focused. Yeah.
Yep. Well,
Yep.
we're all in this thing together.
We're all in the soup. We're in the soup.
And please, everyone, join me in thanking Douglas Penick today for coming and sharing and reading excerpts. The prose is really wonderful to hear, by the way. You're a great writer of prose. So thank you, Douglas, for attending and coming and being
Well,
with us today.
thank you all for being so patient and listening, and thank you for inviting me. I'm very, very grateful, and this has been a wonderful visit. Thank you.